It's very unusual for a national union leader to mount a detailed and public attack on the federal leader of the Labor Party, but that's what's happened over the weekend. On the front page of Saturday's News Limited papers, Diane Asmar, the Federal Secretary of the Health Services Union, effectively accused the Labor Party of bullying her close friend, Senator Kimberley Kitching, to death. Kitching, you see, thought for herself, spoke her mind. She was a proud and strong warrior from Labor's right, but that made her difficult and dangerous for the hard-left Stalinists who run modern Labor. And those mean girls too, who run Labor in the Senate. Penny Wong, Christina Keneally and Katie Gallagher, women who were jealous of her ability, perhaps feared she might overtake them in the ministerial ranks given she spoke 5 languages and already had won a global prize for her human rights advocacy. So the allegations go, they picked on her, they bullied her, relegated her away from the spotlight, made her time in the parliament pretty miserable by the end. Claims they deny, but like many, they're not believed, including by another Labor woman who says she suffered much the same fate, former New South Wales federal MP Emma Hussar, who's on the program tonight. When Kitching complained about her treatment to the leader of her faction, Richard Marles, and others, her friends say they did nothing to help. Indeed, as Asmar wrote on the weekend, a meeting the night before her death effectively signalled the end of her career as the factional bosses carved up who would get pre-selection endorsement and who would be pushed to the Albanese-controlled national executive for them to decide. Asmar says that would have meant the end of the road for her friend. This is the party that's supposed to be the workers' friend, completely clueless about its own workplace failings, demanding a standard from others that they refuse to meet for one of their own. Here was Penny Wong on the ABC decrying workplace bullying and intimidation, just not on her own side.
Mr Morrison must act. He should identify who the people are and he should say what action has been taken. Mr Morrison must act. He should identify who the people are and he should say what action has been taken. And I would make a clear statement. Of course, bullying and intimidation in any workplace are unacceptable. And I think compounded by some of the comments which have been made by members of the coalition who have been suggesting, being very insensitive about Ms Banks' position. Mr Morrison needs to decide if he's going to be a Prime Minister that condones this or if he's going to be a Prime Minister, a leader who says this is unacceptable, because it is.
Kitching's death and the attempt by Labor officialdom to deny any part in it has all been too much for Asmar, head of one of the country's biggest unions with 95,000 members. Kimberley Kitching said Asmar was the sister I never had, and that she was, and I quote, the subject of horrendous workplace bullying at the hands of people that may go on to lead our nation. Now let that sink in for a moment. This is the senior union leader speaking of the Labor leadership and saying they're not worthy to lead our country. Asmar was scathing about her own party. She said, I'm sickened by the sheer hypocrisy of those same Labor senators and politicians wrapping their arms around Brittany Higgins when they themselves perpetrated bullying against one of their own. Asmar says that she's writing to Labor's national executive to complain about the hounding of Kitching, the demotion, the denial of material, the exclusion from the Senate Tactics Committee, the accusations of treachery and the constant sledging. But says she expects to get a reply, quote, the Monday after the federal election. By which time, of course, Albanese, Marles, Wong, Keneally and Gallagher could all well be running the country. Yesterday, at the hands of Channel 9's Chris Ullman, himself married to a former Labor MP, Penny Wong was finally subject to some tough questions about issues I raised here last week, including that horrific slur that Kitching didn't understand issues regarding children because she couldn't have any of her own. What was always needed here was a sincere apology and a change of heart. It's clear that in the cathedral in Melbourne today, as many of her loved ones played tribute and she was farewelled by friends and former foes, that Australia has lost an outstanding and increasingly rare parliamentarian. Someone who, yes, was absolutely tribal, very much a Labor warrior, but that's not all she was. As a politician, she was bigger than that, and a woman for others in the truest sense of the word. Bill Shorten, a longtime friend of Kimberley's, told the congregation a story that I'd like you to hear tonight.
On August the 15th last year, the Taliban seized Kabul. On August the 22nd, a young 17-year-old VCE student from Cranbourne, a young man of Afghan-Australian heritage, Sam Darabi, contacted me about his older brother's fiancée. Sam's brother was in Melbourne, but his fiancée was stranded in Afghanistan. Her name was Roya. Sam told me that his sister-in-law, Roya, was outside the eastern gate of Kabul airport, wanting to flee. Knowing of Kimberley's extensive network of security and international contacts, I made her aware of Roya's story. She instantly leapt into action, obtained a temporary visa for Roya, got it to Sam, who emailed it to his sister-in-law outside the eastern gate in Kabul. But then there was another challenge: how to get Roya, even with valid visa, through the Taliban and NATO forces and our own ADF surrounding the airport. Kimberley had a brainwave. She messaged Roya to photograph herself in a yellow scarf, then send it to us, and then Kimberley, and I still don't know how to this day, got the photo of Roya taken outside the walls to a private in the Australian Army at the gate. Roya went forward. I mean, only Kimberley could combine fashion, intrigue and good works. Roya is safe. She started a new life in Australia. She's here today in this church. She's wearing a yellow scarf as a tribute to Kimberley, who helped save her life. Kimberley rescued 30 different people as Kabul fell.
Kimberley Kitching was farewelled today, so the alternative Prime Minister now has no justification for further delay and no excuse not to accept that Labor could have behaved better, done better, and do something about it. This Labor human rights lioness, as she was called this afternoon in the cathedral in Melbourne, deserves the same human rights, even in death, denied her in the end. After all, at a minimum, if you want to run the country, leadership starts at home.